Automatic start-stop function, Bose surround sound, HDD satellite navigation, LED light technology, sports seats, alloy wheels, cruise and climate control. And now, 5 years of free servicing. The Audi A1, a big idea condensed. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. Up to 5 years or 50,000 miles servicing, whichever comes sooner. Available for new A1s ordered before 30th of November 2013. Conditions apply. Retail sales only.
I'm Andy McCall in the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre. Problems still in Brixton coming into town. The A23 partially blocked, just approaching Cold Harbour Lane. It's an accident involving a lorry and a box van. I think a motorcyclist could be involved in this as well. The fire brigade and ambulance crews now working away at the scene. Just the one lane open, and there's a string of buses to get past there as well. Hounslow and Bath Road, that closure remains, we think, until later on this afternoon between Sutton Lane and Corbin Road. That was after a gas explosion on Monday earlier this week. Shepherd's Bush and Uxbridge Road, the closure remains between Old Oak Road and Percy Road with a water main that's burst. For the tubes, Piccadilly line still looking at minor delays west of Acton Town after signal problems earlier near Turnham Green, and Greater Anglia congestion going through Stratford, about 50 minutes extra on your journey after problems earlier near Ipswich. Keeping London moving. Next travel update is in 50 minutes.
LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning to you, 5 minutes after 9 on Friday, November the 1st, and the Power Hour continues as we close down the switchboard for the calls for Sir Peter Hendy, Transport Commissioner for London, and we have talked about getting him back soon, because I can see how many of you want to say, well, they open again for someone just as powerful. Nigel Farage, leader, of course, of UKIP, and love him or loathe him, and love or loathe UKIP, undoubtedly they have changed the face of British politics over recent years, and they're in a pretty good place if you look at those polls. Nigel Farage is in the studio with me. I'm going to steal, if I may, Nigel. Welcome. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
For coming in. The first question, I hear so much about the big six energy companies. David Cameron says we should all go and switch. Ed Miliband did actually take that advice. Nick Clegg, Ed Miliband did. Nick Clegg hasn't switched because he's happy with his supplier. Where do you stand on the great energy row?
I've been saying for 7 or 8 years that something truly scandalous is happening with energy in this country. Namely, because of EU agreements, we've gone down the route of building back-chomping, bird-destroying wind turbines. Not only are they ugly, hideously ugly, but they don't actually work, and they're leading to one of the biggest transferences of wealth from poor to rich people in this country. Did you know David Cameron's father-in-law? His father-in-law earns £1,000 a day for just having wind turbines sited on his land. And as a result of that, we all pay a 10% surcharge on our electricity bills. Our manufacturers are paying near a 20% as a surcharge. And it's been impossible to discuss this because if, you know, over the years, when I've dared to say this, I get screamed at and told that I'm a denier. I'm denying that climate change and global warming is happening. So the first thing to address is that 10% of this bill is completely unnecessary and is achieving nothing.
Wind turbines are unnecessary, Nigel Farage.
They are a disaster. I was so pleased to see one blew down in that hurricane-force wind in Devon last week. I hope the whole lot blow down. I absolutely hate the things. They are ghastly. One of the biggest follies I've seen in my life. But the point that's not being made is that already projected between now and 2020 are thousands more wind turbine applications, both onshore and even more expensive offshore. You know, that works even worse than onshore energy. And there's a whole series of tax rises coming between now and 2020. So let's put that in perspective. Our energy companies, over the last 10 years, have had a return on capital of about 5 to 6% per annum. OK, it's more than the interest rate you'll get at the bank, and I accept that. But it is hardly profiteering on a vast scale. And people don't realise our energy is actually cheaper than France and Germany. So we haven't been having that bad a deal of it compared to other European countries. Why have the big six hiked their prices in the last few weeks? I'll tell you why. Because Ed Miliband said if he wins the election, he's going to freeze the price. And they'll go on putting up the price if they think Labour is going to come to power. So what Miliband has done, I think, is entirely counterproductive.
What should he have done, or what should the Prime Minister be doing?
Well, you know, I thought we'd grown up and realised that price fixing does not work. We tried this back in the 1970s. We even tried it with sugar for a bit. Do you remember? Extraordinary disaster under Wilson. Governments cannot fix the price of commodities or currencies. I speak as somebody who spent 20 years as a commodity broker. It never, ever works. There is a bizarre assumption amongst Miliband and Cameron that energy prices are bound to rise over the next few years. Actually, if we took up the gift horse that is looking us in the mouth, and it's called shale gas.
Or fracking.
Fracking is the method by which we extract the shale gas. And we should remind ourselves that in Texas and states like that have gone down this route, domestic energy bills have fallen by 50%. So I don't think that the overall outlook for energy needs to be as bleak as one thinks. I think Miliband was wrong to try and fix the price. I think the government was wrong to guarantee a strike price to the Chinese investors of double what the current electricity price is for the next 35 years. I think there's room for optimism to think that energy prices actually, over the next decade, will be lower.
Do you ever switch on those switching sites?
I've never got round to doing it, to be honest with you. I do understand. It's rather like changing bank accounts. You can save a few bob doing it. Perhaps if I had time, I would.
You've got time to take calls. Headphones on,
Yeah.
and here we go. Diana's in Uxbridge, and you're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead, Diana.
Good morning, Nigel. I have just one question. Is the HS2 proposal actually an EU directive?
Good question. I don't want to sound too conspiratorial about this, Diane, but in 2004, the British government signed up in Brussels to something called TENs, Trans-European Networks, and there was a map of where high-speed rail should go across the European Union, and blow me down if the UK proposal was not on exactly the same route that HS2 is now currently proposed to run on. And I have wondered if one of the reasons that all the parties support it is they don't want to go back to the Council of Ministers in Brussels and say, sorry, chaps, we're breaking this agreement from 2004. So there is, without doubt, an EU element behind it. But I think even bigger than that is the element of a vanity project. You know, if we were really talking about capacity, and that's been the argument this week, do you know, I've just come in to London from Kent today. I stood all the way. It was jam-packed. I couldn't even read the newspaper. It was that busy. And there's 120,000 people every day standing in pretty appalling conditions coming into London. That's a capacity issue. And yet we're going to spend 50 billion plus on a railway network for which only 2%
They say
of
it's
the
43.
British...
I mean, it's vast sums. They say it's 43 billion, don't they?
Well, it started off at 30, then it was 35, then it was 40.
So you think it'll rise?
And Boris thinks it might be 70. I mean, any advance on 70, you know. But here's the point, Nick, the key point. Only 2% of the British travelling public use those Virgin intercity trains. We're going to spend 50 billion quid on 2% of the British travelling public. I have no doubt this country, particularly London, with a population that's headed towards 10 million, we need more trains, we need more underground facilities. Thank goodness Crossrail is now currently under construction. But let's not waste the money on 2%. Let's think about the other 98%.
Thanks for that, Diana. Robin, you're in Herne Hill. You're through. Robin.
Hello, yes, Nigel. I'm a bit worried about the party's grammar schools position, because I think 11 is too young to divide sheep and goats. And what are you going to do to the 75% of people who fail the 11 plus? As I was the 11 plus failure, it put me back about a dozen years when I was growing up.
Well, Robin...
remind the listeners what the policy is if they don't know.
We believe that every child should have the opportunity to access a selective school. And that's what we used to call grammar schools. Call them what you like, but it is selective education. It is the creaming off, if you like, of the top academic layers of boys and girls.
Robin.
Well, sheep from goats is a crude way of putting it, but I suppose there is some truth in that, to be fair. Robin, first point is that you don't do this at 11 and say that's set in stone for all time. You have a revision at 13, because some people develop at different rates and different levels. But, you know, you're calling me from Herne Hill, all right? So you're in the borough of Southwark. Southwark has some of the best private schools in the country. Allane's School, James Allen's Girls' School, Dulwich College, which had the misfortune of having me there for a few years.
It got over it.
It just about. Some of the best private schools in the country are in that borough. But if you have a look in Southwark at the state schools, I'm sorry, you know, and there may be people there trying very hard, but for all sorts of reasons, they're producing very, very poor results. If you've got a bright 11-year-old boy or girl growing up in Herne Hill, if they don't have the opportunity of going to what we used to call a grammar school, they are extremely unlikely to go to Oxford and Cambridge. Now, I know that 75% of kids don't pass the 11 plus and don't go to grammar school. That doesn't mean they're written off. What it means is they go to a school that is less academic, and they might just, a percentage of them understand by the age of 14 or 15 that there is great merit in this country in learning trades and skills. We have a massive skill shortage in Britain, and one of the problems is we've been encouraging everybody to go to university when in many cases they shouldn't. So I know that it's harsh, or it seems harsh, that at 11 and 13 these decisions are taken. But you know what, Robin? Once you leave school, life is harsh.
Quick response, Robin, in a sentence or two.
Well, I would like to see you have to sort of bring back polytechnics if you want your crafts things. And, you went to public school, and a lot of people in UKIP went to public school. So, I mean, they're a bit oblivious to the real world. My nephews, 3 of them, went to comprehensive and got to university. So you can't condemn all comprehensive.
Robin, I'm not condemning all comprehensives. And actually, out in the shires, there are many comprehensives doing very, very well. I've got a mate who is a governor of a school in Croydon. There are 57 different languages being spoken in that school. There are huge problems from some families, unfortunately, where crime is a real issue. The teachers that work there spend more time being probation officers than being teachers. And in the inner cities, kids are being disadvantaged by this.
Robin, thank you. Good luck with your nephews and your nieces as well. More calls to Nigel Farage after a travel update.
Office clowns. They're so witty, answering the phone in hilarious accents, putting salt in the sugar and post-it notes on people's backs. The creative geniuses. About 1 in every 76 jokes they send around may be pretty funny, but renaming the server after a famous rap artist is not. But now your teams can work with the Office Clown without actually being with the Office Clown. Because with cloud-based file sharing, Microsoft Office 365 lets your teams work together without being together. Or speaking in hilarious accents. Find out more at office365.com. Terms and conditions apply.
You want a loan, but the banks leave you alone. You've got a car that you own, so now you can get that loan. Pick up the dog and bone. Call loanmymotor.com. Okay. That doesn't quite rhyme, does it? But if you call 0800 048 8844, you could get a loan secured on your motor that you pay back over 12 to 36 months with the typical APR of 230.7%. No credit checks or setup fees, and you get to keep your car. Loanmymotor.com. Responsible lenders you can trust.
You too could live in Blackheath Village with as little as a £15,000 deposit. Register now at galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
With B&Q Home Fit, you don't have to do it yourself. We can do it for you. Did you know we don't just fit kitchens, bathrooms and bedrooms? With approved tradesmen, we can give you a hand with the small jobs too. So whether you're preparing for winter or making over an unloved room, we can install flooring, tiling and even fires, as well as insulation, windows, doors and much more. And all of our work comes with a workmanship guarantee, upfront fixed prices and finance options available. B&Q Home Fit, here to help you do it. Subject to survey.
I'm Andy McCall in the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre. So these problems in Brixton, A23, partially blocked, coming into town, approaching Cold Harbour Lane. A lorry and a box van involved in this accident, and it looks as if it's just the one lane open there. Ambulance also parked up in lane 2 on the southbound side. Forest Hill, Sydenham Hill, and that's closed in both directions. There's an accident between Sydenham Rise and Kirkdale. Tooting High Street, and a lorry has broken down northbound just by Tooting Broadway, just by the Broadway station. And for Shepherd's Bush, the Uxbridge Road still closed between Old Oak Road and Percy Road with a water main that's burst. Keep another moving. Next travel updates is in 15 minutes.
This is LBC 97.3. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC 97.3.
With Go-To Meeting. Get started with online meetings today.
Every goes into every Renault van. The advanced technology developed for our multi-championship winning Formula 1 engines also goes into the heart of every Renault Kangoo van, meaning greater fuel efficiency and reduced emissions. Kangoo van prices start from $8,995 plus 4 years warranty and roadside assistance. To experience the technology for yourself, book a test drive today at Renault.co.uk. Excludes 20% VAT and delivery charges, business users only.
This is Now TV. This is a no-contract 24-hour day pass to all 6 Sky Sports channels this weekend. This is Cardiff versus Swansea in the Battle of Wales, while Tottenham take on the Toffees, and all the action from the ATP World Tour. How's that? Oops, sorry, wrong sport. This is all for just $9.99. Get your 24-hour Sky Sports Day Pass at nowtv.com.
Now TV is powered by Sky. Content streamed. For device limits, compatibility and full terms, see nowtv.com.
The semi-flex fare. That if the meeting finishes early, fly home early fare. The not hanging around the airport trying every perfume in duty-free fare. The home in time for tea fare. The happy husband fare. The maybe he'll give you a massage fare. The probably not fare. The semi-flex fare. British Airways. To fly, to serve, to Europe.
Selected flights to European destinations from London Heathrow, London Gatwick and London City airports. Change of flight may be made on the day of departure with no additional cost. Visit ba.com/Europe for full terms and conditions.
You too could live in Blackheath Village with as little as a £15,000 deposit. Register now at galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
Bring a splash of colour to your home this autumn at Homebase with 3 for 2 across all Dulux paint, wallpaper and accessories. Homebase, cheapest item free.
LBC 97.3, London's biggest conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
In the studio with me, Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP. Now, Nigel, you explained how when you came in on the train this morning, you were unable to open your morning newspaper. Had it been the front page of the Telegraph, I don't know whether it is, but on the front page you'd have read that thousands of foreigners arrested in Britain are routinely avoiding deportation, so new figures have shown. The findings come as ministers call for an overhaul of European human rights laws that stop criminals being thrown out of the country. Mr Farage, your view?
Yeah, 2 points there. Firstly, that hardly any foreign criminal that gets arrested gets deported. And secondly, they had the London figures in that report, and now 25% of the arrests in London are foreigners. It's very high, isn't it? And I think this feeds in to something, and I know I've been criticised for saying this and accused of scapegoating, but I'm genuinely not trying to. But Romania is a country that has not recovered from communism. It's a country within which there is a dispossessed minority of over 3 million Roma people. They haven't got houses, they haven't got jobs, they're completely discriminated against in their own country, and I feel sorry for them. As a result of that, many have turned to a culture of crime. There is no denying that. We've already got a problem in London. I mean, the Metropolitan Police have made 27,000 arrests of Romanians over the last 5 years alone, and on January the 1st next year, we're opening up the doors to the whole of Romania and saying, come on down. And I think that front page story in the Telegraph, by this time next year, Nick, will be an even bigger story.
Despite the arrests of tens of thousands, Nigel Farage, of foreign criminals in London, just 4,700 were deported from Britain. Yeah. It's a failure in a massive scale.
I mean, your programme's covered this over the years. You know, people claim the right, Article 8, and they claim a right to a family life, or they've got a pet cat, or, whatever it may be. And it's really ironic, isn't it, that we don't deport foreign criminals because of the human rights legislation, and yet, under EU rules, we deport people like Andrew Symeou from North London to a jail in Greece, where he sits there for 18 months and is then released without charge. Something has gone horribly wrong, and I think that European human rights legislation has completely turned on its head the British sense of fair play under common law.
And lastly on this, on a related theme, you may have had sight of the Daily Express, which is running a campaign it started yesterday. Britain is full up and fed up. The Deputy Prime Minister, sitting in the seat you're in now, was questioned about this on his show. I think by anybody's view, he didn't give a particularly candid answer. Is Britain full up and fed up, and what should it do about it? Do you agree with the campaign, the Express campaign?
Well, firstly, the Express, hurrah for the Express. Don't forget it was the Express in November 2010 who came out as the first national newspaper saying Britain should leave the European Union. So they've got form on this. Indeed, of course, in the 1930s, the Express was the only newspaper saying Hitler was a danger, when everybody else thought he was a good bloke. So the Express has quite a good record on these things. No, I think what the Express are doing turning on the siren and saying in 8 weeks' time, we are opening ourselves up to unconditional numbers of people from Romania and Bulgaria. Their poll shows 98% of Express readers are opposed to it. I bet you, if we had an opinion poll, proper opinion poll across all British people, and asked the simple question, should we open the doors unconditionally to 28 million people from Romania and Bulgaria, I bet you 80% plus would say no. It doesn't make sense. We've got 1 million of our own young people currently unemployed. We don't need more unskilled labour.
And I did ask him this, and I'll ask you this. Why can't Nick Clegg give a straight answer, lastly, on this, do you suppose, Mr Farage?
Oh, because they're so tied up in knots that they don't want to admit their own impotence. The fact is, there's nothing we can do about it, because we're signed up to a series of European treaties. But rather than admit that, that sort of terrible confession, as I say, of their own impotence as a government, as a coalition in Westminster, they faff around and try and fob us off. And of course, they think, do you know what? It'll all go away. I was talking to a Tory Eurosceptic the other day. I said, this Romania-Bulgaria thing is so big, it could change British politics. He said, Nigel, it'll be forgotten about in 6 months' time. And even a Eurosceptic saying that shows me just how out of touch Parliament is, Westminster, the government is, with the way ordinary people feel. We are fed up to the back teeth of open-door immigration. It doesn't mean that Britain's full up. I still think there is an argument that says if we had 30 to 50,000 people a year that came to settle in Britain, but they were all people with skills and without criminal records and without life-threatening diseases, we wouldn't even be having this debate.
Let's have a debate about other matters. Terry's in Archway. You're through to Nigel Farage. Terry.
Hi, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Hi. Our Parliament is throwing down many foundations that they feel will provide prosperity into the future. Recently, announcements regarding China and the capital that the Chinese intend to pour into the UK being one, and the other one recently, the announcement of the formation of strictly Muslim banking, a banking sector here in London to facilitate the expansion of this type of banking. Does any of this worry you, as it does me?
Well, look, London is the centre of an international financial marketplace. I worked for 20 years on the London Metal Exchange. On the outside, with our suits and ties and our method of doing business unchanged since Victorian England, and the fact that we all went to lunch, it looked as though nothing had changed.
Decent lunch, Mr Farage?
Proper lunch. It used to happen in the old days.
Quite right.
And it looked as though nothing had changed. But the reality of what I did then and what's happening now is that actually when that phone rings, it's probably Santiago or Singapore. So I think we need to think about foreign capital perhaps in a different way. Do you know the British car industry last year manufactured more motor cars than at any time in the history of manufacturing in this country, and it did it without a single British-owned car company, and yet the business was still being done here. So I think the fact
Specifically Muslim finance, though.
Now, Muslim finance, right, now there's a lot of nonsense here. In the 1980s and 90s, when I was in the city, there was loads of Muslim financing going on. Loads of it. Because under their law, they're not allowed to earn interest. They have to find other methods of doing business. So I don't see any threat to London being a centre for Islamic finance. I just felt the way that David Cameron spoke about it, it was as if he'd sort of invented the wheel. It's actually been going on for decades, and I felt that really what Cameron was doing was pandering to Muslim voters, saying what a good chap I am.
And China building our nuclear power.
Well, I tell you my concern about this. I'm not concerned about Chinese money coming into Britain. I welcome it. But what I think is bonkers is that we've gone for this plant at Hinckley, and we've guaranteed the Chinese investors a strike price, as it's called, over the course of the next 35 years, which is exactly double what the current cost of electricity is. It's a damn good deal for China. I think it's a rotten deal for the British taxpayer, but it's based on the idea I mentioned earlier on this show. They assume energy prices will go up, and I think, actually, if we get fracking and start to use a lot more genuine new technology, the price can come down.
Raj in Stanmore, you're through to Nigel Farage. Raj.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Nigel.
Morning.
Nigel, your views about, and David Cameron's views about bringing money into the country, etc., which is all well and good, going out looking for investment. But what are you guys going to do about small businesses? We've been going through what we call a so-called recession, okay? And to date, I've never heard any of the parties say, well, look, small businesses, we're going to freeze business rates, we're going to do this. You guys have said nothing about that.
Well,
so, great looking for outside.
Well, Raj,
when are you guys going to help us?
Raj, I have talked about small business. I ran one myself. Big business and big investment makes the news. But everybody forgets the fact that it's the 4.5 million small businessmen and women of this country who are the genuine backbone of our economy. 80% of the British economy isn't imports and exports. It's what goes on within these islands. And 60% of private sector jobs are provided by companies with fewer than 10 employees. So I do understand. Right, what would I do to help small business? I think the single biggest thing we could do to help small business is to look at employee protection and to say, whilst this may be appropriate for Unilever or a giant company employing many thousands of people, it is wholly inappropriate for small companies. And you know, everywhere I go, Raj, I meet small businessmen and women. I say, how's it going? It's going well. Are you going to employ somebody? Forget it, they say. We don't need to go through the tribunal. We don't need the cost. So a genuine relaxation of employment legislation that would allow you to hire and fire far more at will than you're able to today. I know the left will scream, the BBC and the Guardian will say we're going back to slavery, but actually, not only would it help it wouldn't just help small business, it'd get more people in work.
Raj?
No, sorry to interrupt you. It's not the employment side of things. You're not helping, for example, business rates. There's never been a freeze. There's never been a reduction. You've got ruthless landlords out there who are hiking their rents up. Look how many empty shops we've got in the high streets now. And it's not down to employment. If you can't help a business run it, at the moment we have stock, we purchase stocks. We can't front load this to the customers. So we're working hell of a lot harder for the same money.
Well, I think that the introduction by Mrs. Thatcher of uniform business rates has been a mistake. I think you should be able to vote in local elections for your own authority that set business rates that help to make the high street competitive. And I think that's one thing that could be done to help. Actually, health and safety legislation, environmental legislation. I mean, so much of this stuff is designed for a perfect world, but impacts very, very badly on businesses like yours.
We have time for one final, Raj, thank you, one final question. Alex in Edgware. Alex.
Hello, Nigel.
Good morning.
Basically, you talked about your energy policy at the beginning, and you condemning windmills. And I mean, the policy just sounds like it was written by the editor of the Daily Mail. We want sensible policies that make sense and that keep people safe. You promoting fracking and nuclear power is not going to make British people happy. However bad windmills are, they don't leak radiation. And you don't need to be digging holes to plant the fallout from the plants.
Well, Alex, I'm very sorry, old son, but you're living in cloud cuckoo land. Wind energy does not work. Because when the wind blows, it produces zero energy. You could cover the whole blooming country in these ugly things. And when you get a big anticyclone that sits over Britain in February, when we have low temperatures and peak demand, these things would produce nothing. And then what we'd have to do is import energy from the nuclear plants across the other side of the channel. It's bonkers. I want us to be self-sufficient in energy. That is a perfectly realistic aim. I'm not against, looking at new technology of any kind at all, but wind energy is a con. It doesn't work. It loads huge costs on the poor and makes rich people richer. It has been a flop, and the sooner we recognise that and totally scrap building any more windmills, the better.
Thank you, Alex. Final question from me. Nigel, you've been talking or mooting the possibility of running for a Parliament in Folkestone and Hythe. Any definitive decision?
No, I'm getting ready, Nick, to lead UKIP into a national election in 6 months' time. It happens on May the 22nd. It's the European elections. I believe that's an opportunity for us to cause an earthquake in British politics by saying to people, make this your referendum. Tell them in Westminster what you really think. And I'm entirely focused on that.
And why the earthquake, Nigel? Why do you think there's an earthquake round the corner for UKIP?
Because I think that the majority of people in this country have now lost faith in our career political class, and they want something different. And whilst UKIP may not be perfect, and no party ever is, whilst we may not be perfect, I think we're in tune on the idea that we shouldn't be governed from Brussels. I think we're absolutely at one with them on the idea that open-door immigration to Romania next year is irresponsible. And I think for those reasons, the cocktail is right. It may not happen, but the cocktail is right for us to do something really big. And once we've done that, I will then think about what to do in 2015.
Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, appearing on LBC 97.3. Thank you. News is next.